Hi everyone, this is John Bale, and welcome to another recorded webinar offered by Thought Technology. Today I'm going to be talking about the Synergy Solution, a really cool product that lets you do group training in an easy manner with a simple little sensor and a great software. For those of you who may have heard my voice before, I have presented a bunch of other products for Thought Technology, and you can go find those in our YouTube listing, and I'm really excited to be able to talk about this product with you today. So what is the Synergy Solution? Some of you may realize that quite a few years ago we released a small finger sensor called the eVu-TPS, and we've also released a computer software that uses one of those sensors in order to do assessments and training. Well, the natural extension of that product is that we've now released the Synergy solution that lets you use up to 4 of those different little TPS sensors simultaneously on the same computer. This really opens great possibilities for you being able to record physiological information coming from 2, 3, 4 people at the same time, and this could be useful in the context of sport, group therapy, education, and it's really awesome, and I'm excited to show it to you all. I do have to say that the development team has very much enjoyed creating this because, as we're going to find out a little bit more, it's just entertaining to be able to see each other's physiology at the same time on one computer, and that leads to kind of competitive and exciting fun and just entertaining sessions where you want to beat someone else. Now, how does it get used? Well, you can be practicing stress-based self-regulation skills with more than one person at the same time. Imagine you're working with a team of athletes. You don't have to do this with them each separately, and you don't have to load up several different computers where they each have their own computer. This is a great solution where you can see all of their physiology on one monitor for your own tracking purposes. Similarly, you can do great work in group therapy sessions or one-on-one training where you can track and monitor what's going on in multiple individuals just with one computer in easy, simple line graphs and based reports. What exactly are we recording in terms of data? Well, this is using the eVu-TPS sensor. So for those of you who are familiar with this little sensor that goes on the finger, we are recording arousal or sweat information. That can be otherwise called skin conductance or electrodermal response. We're also recording the finger temperature, and we're also recording heart rate variability. We can get a lot of great statistics from these 3 measurements, and they give us quite a good idea of how the person might be feeling from moment to moment, as well as over the long term if they're doing good, slow, relaxed breathing. Now, this finger sensor, if you're not familiar with it, is wireless, so it sends all its data via Bluetooth to a computer. For those of you who did not realize this, you can actually have multiple Bluetooth connections to a single computer, hence why we can use up to 4 of these sensors simultaneously. In terms of setup, it's nothing like any of our previous technology where there's wires and cables and quite a few electrodes. It's just one simple TPS sensor on each person's finger, and you can get up to 4 of those people simultaneously with a computer. Cost-wise, it's actually great because some of our more advanced systems, of course, they can record a lot more data, a lot more modalities, muscles, EEG, things like that. But this Synergy solution, along with the TPS sensor, is a very good price, a low price point for those, especially who want to work with multiple individuals or those who just want to enter the field, being able to look at multiple sources of data. We'll talk about the cost towards the end of the presentation. Most importantly in the Synergy solution, I like how this really adds in fun. It's always silly talking about that, but people like to see their own physiology, but suddenly when you have multiple individuals who most likely know each other, sports team, family members, school, classroom, they like to see each other's physiology at the same time. And so it really gets people interested in this technology as well as this methodology if they can see what's going on in each other's bodies and learn more about that, let alone just learning about their own. When we think about how this gets applied, I've already mentioned it, but the Synergy solution is great for self-regulation with a team. I don't have to have multiple different systems set up. I can all have it with one computer, and I can have them train whatever I want them to train at the same time. In our sessions, we've set it up such that you can make the training more competitive or more cooperative, or you can just do it in terms of data monitoring without much feedback. It's up to you. But what we know is that when it comes to wanting to work with multiple individuals at the same time, this sort of team training is absolutely incredible how we've created it. Similarly, this type of team training really motivates the therapy with challenges. You can be challenging in the sense of you want one athlete to be better than the other, and athletes love a good challenge, especially when it comes to someone they already know. But you can even think of this in the context of maybe you only work with one person at a time, but you could challenge your client to see how well they do self-regulation in relation to you. sometimes it can be difficult to motivate some of our younger clients. And so if you are able to show them simultaneously that you can do the relaxation task, the low and slow breathing task, the hand warming task, that might push them to do a little bit better job because they want to try to beat you. And so that's a really cool thing that's now possible with Synergy Solution. In a different context, we can also look at couples counseling, family therapy, and group therapy. And so there's quite a large base of literature when it comes to wanting to record physiological information coming from people who are members of the same family or the same groups. This could be with 2 people, 3, or 4. And there's a lot of good research. John Gottman is one of those names that is very familiar in the couples therapy circuits. And we can use this technology to measure what's going in terms of physiology, to actually copy what he did in his original research, as well as provide new inferences. So you can get an idea when someone is starting to shut out the other individual, when they're getting really frustrated and they might not be showing it. It also shows mirroring when people's heart rates and sweat start going up and down at the same time with each other because they're really kind of getting in line. There's a really, really cool things that the Gottmans originally studied and that you can now follow that as well. In line with other research is emotionally focused therapy, EFT by Dr. Sue Johnson. This is a perfect way of displaying the EFT tango, as she calls it, how individuals kind of realize their emotions. And skin inductance and temperature and heart rate are excellent at showing those changing emotional states. Similarly, the psychobiological approach to couples therapy focuses on that sympathetic, parasympathetic, autonomic nervous system balance. And so that's all great reference points of where you might want to take this in relation to couples therapy and family therapy, group therapy. If I were to break this down in a really simple sense, we know that people's arousal, their sweat response goes up and down as they care more, care less about certain subjects. And that's a very simple one metric you can use to see how people's discussions are going, if they're getting more sympathetically engaged or not. Similarly, we all know heart rate tends to go up when people are really into something, and we might see how someone's heart rate just drops out as they're dissociating and they're just they just stopped caring about whatever the topic of discussion is. Either way, this technology is small, unobtrusive, and it really adds a lot of objective information about what's going on inside of people's bodies that they might not be aware of, and that you can use to your advantage as a therapist, as well as to show them how they're feeling or what's going on inside of them. A third big group of people who this technology is going to interest are those who present on stress management and wellness. This could be within the context of an office. We're teaching workers how to better deal with their own internal stress, but also this definitely works for schools. We're trying to educate or introduce the idea of psychophysiology and stress management. There's something that people love, and that's absolutely being able to see each other's physiology on screen, and it really creates a great impact with audiences and participants. You can talk about what's going on as they try a task, how their physiology changes, goes up or goes down in terms of different modalities. And this is an amazing tool for really getting the point across to individuals that you can objectively measure what's going on in their body, and that their feelings and what's occurring in their body are directly connected and linked. It's a great, great tool. Before I actually jump in to look at the software with you guys, let's look over some concepts that we took to heart as we were designing this package. So one of the things is that just because you're recording with more people does not mean we need to make it more complicated. We put a lot of effort to trying to simplify the information because, of course, if you're only evaluating data coming from one individual, we can show lots of stats, but suddenly when there's 2, 3, or 4 people, then yeah, we have to simplify it. And so that's something we took a lot of care in. And we need to be able to easily compare the individuals as well. The reality is that different bodies react differently to physiology, and we need to at least have core components that let you compare if someone is getting more sympathetically engaged than another individual, or being able to rank them in a format that's easy to read and make sense of. Finally, if you want to use the concept of competition, so again, for the athletes, definitely, for group therapy, maybe not, competition does lead to entertainment. If people are entertained, they're going to want to also continue with this therapy because, it's more engaging to them. And so you can really push on that competitive side if you want to really get people more involved with the therapy. And that's a great, great thing. What does the software look like? Well, it's actually broken down into 3 little components. And so we have our cooperative biofeedback component, in which case you can record the data coming from different participants. And if they both do the task correctly, together at the same time, then we get the feedback reward. In this little example, people are trying to raise their finger temperature. You have player 1 and player 2. If they both get their temperature to go above their little set goals, the fire grows bigger and they can hear music. The other side of the software is the competitive biofeedback, where each individual, in this example, there's 1, 2, 3, and 4, have their own separate little feedback components. It's a little kind of character avatar running through a maze. And when each individual person is doing a good job just for themselves, they advance in this maze and they start moving to next mazes and doing better than the other players. Very, very competitive because they can see each other, as well as obviously themselves, and they can see how well they're doing in relation to each other. Finally, we can also look at group dynamics and monitoring. So we don't always care about the actual feedback component of this. A lot of useful data, especially in terms of group therapy, just comes from looking at what's going on inside of the body without any sort of bells or whistles. And so you can monitor general physiology for each individual who's being recorded, and that can be shown in real time on the screen. Finally, for our software, we also have a nice little Excel report that helps rank the different people in terms of their self-regulation skills. This is more useful for those who want to fall onto that competitive side of things, especially with athletes and groups who like to compete together. The report will rank individuals in terms of the different biosignals or modalities that we're looking at and says who's best at what, who's most consistent, who's improved. There's a little key that helps describe each of these rankings so that you can make better sense of it. The big cool thing is that you can do recording and you immediately pop up this report and it lets you know who did the best at what. And really, that's just what competitive people and athletes want to be able to see really quickly. All right, so let's jump into the software and let me show you what this looks like. So over here, we're in the normal Biograph Infinity platform that hosts all of our different software applications, or suites as we like to call them. I'm going to jump over to Quick Start. And we're going to see in this Quick Start screen that on the left-hand side, I have my list of clients. And on the right-hand side, I have what's currently listed as my Synergy solution. And so I have Synergy solution 1 model right here, and we can see the list of sessions that are currently available. I have some sessions for biofeedback competitive, where it's going between 2 or 4 users. I have some biofeedback cooperative, so again, 2 or 4 users, and that group dynamics and monitoring for 2 or 4 users. If you wanted to go with 3 people, you'd be choosing the 4-person session, just because the way the screen is split up more conveniently for them. This is a fast way of launching any session, and it really just goes towards whether you want the feedback to be more competitive, more cooperative, or to have no real feedback, no bells and whistles, just really monitoring with line graphs and data. Now, this is the preset version of the software. For those who are researchers who want to modify our software to meet your specific needs, that's totally okay. You can always use our free editing tools to change any of these preset sessions, to have different visuals, or to have fixed protocols with certain timing. All of that is a normal standard feature of our technology, and we are happy to let you do that because our software is also meant for researchers and those who want to do publications. Now, I'm not going to record a live session with you all because unfortunately I am just one person and I do not feel like recording my physiology with 4 of the exact same sensors. That's less interesting. So I already have a session saved and I'm going to go open that up, and that was recorded with me and my colleagues as we were entertaining ourselves, seeing who would be the best at the different breathing tasks. So let me jump over to the database and let me pull up this session, and I'm going to hit the replay button so we get an idea of what a few different things look like. Here the screen opens up. It's a very simple overlay. We can see there's 4 different sections, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this is for the 4 different people for whom we were recording data from. Each person has their own sensor, and so they have their own section on this screen. Although I already know how this is set up, new people don't know how these different screens are set up. So in case they need some help, a great thing in this package is that they can always go to Screens and Screen Info, and we're going to have a PDF that automatically opens up, and we'll go and talk about how this screen is used. Each of those little screen infos are context dependent, so whatever screen you happen to be looking at, you'll see appropriate information for that. So let me just hit the play button and you will see what the screen looks like. In this particular example, we are just looking at arousal, or that sweat response. For each individual, we're giving them feedback based on the sweat response going down. And so we can see this blue person is doing a pretty good job, although they have very sweaty hands to start with. Whereas yellow and red are also doing well, whereas green may have already been relaxed, but cannot seem to really get the data down. And I would say they're not relaxed because their value went up. And the exact opposite of that. And so this is a very simple way that I could be monitoring this arousal or sweat response when it comes from individual to individual. There is music that plays. I have muted it simply because it gets in the way of me being able to talk to you and be heard. But that could be used as a source of feedback if they're not focusing on the screen themselves with their own eyes. To highlight this particular screen, this would be a competitive screen because each has their own individual section with their own little sense of visual cues and feedback. If I jump over to a different screen, we can see what competition looks like in terms of heart rate variability. And so in just a moment, each of these 4 sections will have the heart rate variability data appear in the line graphs. There we go. And whenever an individual is able to keep the low frequency above its set threshold by doing good low and slow breathing, they get their little feedback reward, which is a little icon or player running through the maze. They want to be able to get through as many mazes as possible, doing better than their compatriots who are also attempting to do this low and slow breathing task. We can see blue, yellow are doing quite well. They're advanced. Green is not far behind, and unfortunately red is having a little bit of difficulty getting there. And that's okay. Some of us thought technology are a little bit better practice at doing low and slow breathing than others. This is another example of a competitive screen. Let's jump over to a different display. This here is temperature for 4 people, and so each has their own little temperature representation with their own animation as well. And again, it's sticking to that competitive feeling. Here is another example of a screen where each player has their own sections for their particular data. However, this is actually a cooperative type of session. Each individual needs to get their heart rate variability to be above their respective thresholds at the same time in order for everyone to get the big feedback, which is this video that's playing in the center of the screen. The video will grow bigger as everyone goes above the thresholds, and then it goes smaller if they're not doing well enough and their HRV is going below the thresholds. I've set the screen pretty generously because, as it turns out, all of us were quite bad at doing this task because we're distracting each other. But we can see that now that each individual has gotten their respective little bar graphs to be above the thresholds that are set there, this animation grew big and we're being able to see the video and get the entertainment that we want to see. If ever one of us were to not achieve the feedback task, let's say this person in yellow on the right, suddenly their sitting goes below the threshold, the animation video starts going away even though the rest of the 3 of us are doing well. This is the idea of cooperative feedback. On this particular screen, it's meant for just monitoring and signal recording where there's no feedback at all. We can see each player has their own little section, and we can be monitoring data as we go along. This is what someone who does group therapy would be looking at in terms of seeing how each individual is feeling about the discussion or where the therapy session is going. It's also what researchers would most likely be using if they just want to record general data and make sure we're getting good, clean, quality statistics for publication. Now, all the screens we looked at so far in this example of a session have really been focusing on 4 individuals. Don't worry, we'll look at a little bit, one that just shows 2 individuals, so it's going to be a little bit less information, a little bit less busy. All the statistics are being recorded during this session, and so we can see there's a lot of information here. I'm not going to worry about those because I'm just going to jump into review mode and I'm going to have an Excel report make sense of those for me. So let's just jump into review mode. Now, if you wanted to do some analysis of the data on your own in review mode, you can do so. We can remove artifacts that happen to show up in the system. I already removed those artifacts at a previous time. I can also look through the data using different review screens, depending on what might be of interest to me and what makes sense. I'm not going to go into a lot of details. I just want you to know that it is possible for you to do a lot of different types of analyses if that is what you want to be able to do. What I do, however, want to show you right now is the Excel report that ranks the different players. And so in this report, I can see there's the different players who are blue, green, yellow, and red. And I can see exactly what they got in terms of this ranking of physiology. So for heart rate variability, we have the green player who's the MVP, and he's the most improved, which is pretty interesting, great combo. Red was the most consistent in terms of heart rate variability signal, and then the resting winner, the one who had the lowest heart rate the whole time, was the yellow player. For arousal, we can see that blue is most consistent, with red with the most improved. In terms of temperature, the yellow player is the MVP for once, because they didn't seem to pop up anywhere else. No, they did pop up there, oops. And then blue is most consistent and green was improved. There's a great way of ranking these individuals, and you might not rank and mention all of these different ways of looking at the data. You might just say the 2 MVPs, which is fair. But it's a way of creating this competitive factor between individuals if you're working with athletes or those who just like to compete and see what's going on with each other and rank each other. On the second page, we actually give explanations of what each of the words means. We don't need to go a lot of detail about those, but just know that we're making this analysis of data as quick and easy as possible for you, the therapist, and as most efficient for the actual players who don't necessarily understand psychophysiology a lot, but just want to get an idea of how well they're doing in relation to each other. If we jump back, I can have a look at the exact same sessions, but if you're only recording with 2 individuals. I realize 4 might not be for everyone, but here is a similar example of just 2 people where we can see the first player is on the left, the second player is on the right, and in this particular screen, it is competitive or very much separate feedback based on the individual's ability to get their sweat response or arousal to be going downward as opposed to upward. Blue seems to be doing a good job with that. Green, not so much right now, but it's not poor. If we jump over to the next screen, we can see an example of this in terms of heart rate variability, where I just want to rush the replay of this because it does take 64 seconds for some of our good quality HRV statistics to appear. There we go. And if either of these individuals can get their LF signal to be above the little threshold, boom, they should be getting the feedback. There we go. We have this maze up here, and their little character starts running through the maze. So right now, green is doing a better job in terms of the HRV breathing than blue. Jumping over to another screen, this is actually the same heart rate variability training. However, now it is more of a cooperative where the feedback only works if both of them are doing a good job. There's an analogy for what's occurring in this feedback. A building is being constructed as they both do good breathing. It's kind of, oh, you're both doing a good job of the low and slow breathing, the good balanced autonomic nervous system. You're both building something together, which is these different structures. It's a little bit silly, but still entertainment. They get to see the building constructed as long as they're both doing a good job. If one ever does a poor job, suddenly the building is going to stop being built. And so we know that blue needs to get back on track with their good low and slow breathing, or at least the training threshold needs to be changed for blue to make it a little bit easier, whereas green perhaps had slightly too easy of a job already. Jumping over to another screen, this is temperature training when we're both doing cooperative feedback. So again, they both have to do well in terms of their temperature going up, or at least remaining even, in order to get the fire to grow. And then when it comes to just simple data monitoring and signal recording, you can just be having line graphs without any feedback. And this works really, really well as. The core of the Synergy solution is, again, like I said before, simple feedback where you can quickly identify which player's data belongs to whom and letting them know if they're doing a good job, whether it's cooperative or competitive. And then also data monitoring where there's no feedback involved, but you, the therapist, can get most utility out of the line graphs, or you, the researcher, gets the best data quality monitoring tools that are possible for group therapy. Coming back to this software, let's just talk about the requirements that you need in order to adopt this system. First off, you need to have a computer with a Windows operating system. It is just how it is. We're not available on Apple products, unfortunately. For the software version of our platform, you need to have version 6.8.2. If you don't have that, you can just go to our website and get a free update. And your computer obviously needs to have Bluetooth because our technology does use Bluetooth in order to send the data wirelessly to your computer. So that should be a given, but some computers don't necessarily have active Bluetooth. Now, in terms of retail cost, this price is actually very, very competitive compared to any other technology that involves group therapy on the market at all. And it's also rather lower cost compared to some of our other technology. And so in terms of what it costs, you do have to pay $950 US for the software license for one of the TPS sensors. And then you have to pay $395 per TPS sensor that you want to use. So let's say you want to use the Synergy solution with 2 individuals at a time. Well, you'd have to pay $950 for the license, and then you have to pay $395 for 2 TPS sensors. Let's say you actually wanted to use this with 4 individuals, well, you'd pay the same $950 license once, and then you'd pay for 3 of the TPS sensors since each of the 4 individuals needs to have 1 sensor on their finger. It's really, really simple, and this is actually a great price considering that this is FDA-regulated medical technology. And it does come with a 1-year warranty, so if anything breaks, you get it replaced for free, and you get free technical support for life, as well as the ability to install this on as many computers as you want. It's really, really cool benefits, and so I think it's absolutely amazing. As a quick aside, I'm right now mentioning the USD price, and so this is the retail cost for US and Canada. If you're elsewhere in the world, prices vary depending on the medical importation fees and customs related to your particular country. I can't really quote on those because it's just a little bit different depending on where you might live. So this is getting towards the end of the presentation, and I'd like to thank you all for paying attention. If any of you have any questions about this technology, you can submit it to myself at mail@thoughttechnology.com. And if you're looking to adopt this technology, then please let us know. We'd be happy to have a conversation with you about it and what you want to do, as well as give you further information if that's what you're looking for. All right, thanks for paying attention. You have a great day. Bye-bye.